Hello, and welcome to the Product Rising podcast. Everyone is talking about what AI can do. But today we're exploring why some users consistently achieve remarkable outcomes with AI, while others struggle to get reliable, accurate, or useful results from the exact same systems. As organizations rush to deploy AI wherever they can, we are learning that success depends not only on the model itself, but also on the skills, judgment, and understanding of the person using it. Stanford scholar and entrepreneur Moritz Sudhof has been studying this gap between AI capability and human capability for more than a decade. His research with Stanford linguistics and computer science professor Chris Potts sheds light on one of the most important and under-discussed challenges in AI adoption: what separates successful AI users from unsuccessful ones, and what organizations, product builders, and individuals can do about it. Welcome to the podcast, Moritz.
It's fantastic to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're thrilled to have you. This is such a timely discussion. First, we'd love to hear a little bit about your background and your path into this field. What originally drew you to studying the interaction between AI and humans?
Yeah, this journey really started for me 15 years ago. I've been circling the same question for my whole career, which is, why does communication work or break down? It started for me doing research at Stanford, kind of early AI days with Chris Potts on politeness and emotion and language, really trying to understand how we can have computers and technology be more sensitive to real human experience. Continued through a couple of companies, and most recently as VP of AI at BetterUp, where we were shipping an AI coach, where literally the product we were shipping was a conversation. It was communication between, in this case now, a user and an AI model. And throughout that whole journey, it's been the same theme for me. Now, it's just higher stakes and higher volume with AI, which is, it's not just about the model. It's not just about capability or technical expertise. It's about the interaction between the user and the model. That's ultimately what determines success or failure. And that's the layer that I think is really understudied as we've been so focused on the model. And that's really what my new company is about too.
I know you've started and worked for a variety of companies in this area over time. How did the questions you were trying to answer change over time throughout those experiences?
I think they changed with the role of AI. So 10 years ago, there was already a lot of language modeling work. This is a field with a storied history and legacy. But 10 years ago, you could only use AI models from a language perspective. Really, the primary use was as analytics models or as routing models. They would help behind the scenes. And now, with the phenomenal advances that we've made in these language models, the language models themselves now are the product. They are the experience. They are the center stage. I've straddled both the research world and the product world. And I used to really think that it was about technical expertise. And I'm the AI expert. I've done deep research. I know how these models work as much as anybody can. And I thought that's what gave me the ability to build really good AI products and to be a really good AI user. And what I've really learned is that it's not about the technical capability of the model or even my own technical capability. It's the interaction level. How do I interact with the model? How does it respond to me? And what do we create together, or how do we fail together?
You did mention that you'd worked for BetterUp. It's a company that has provided career coaching and personal coaching for people for years with human coaches, and then it moved over to AI coaches. When you were working with them, what did you find was interesting about the way the user interacted with the model versus the human?
First, I'll tell you the first things that I thought turned out to be wrong, because I think they're interesting lessons and maybe obvious in retrospect, but these are all things that we had to learn and are still learning in many cases, which is an AI is not a replacement for a human. And in fact, when you think about it that way, you're just going to build a bad product and build a bad experience for a user. And ChatGPT and the great GPT moment came, and we at BetterUp saw this as a fantastic opportunity. The mission of BetterUp is to help people everywhere lead their lives with greater clarity, purpose, and passion. And human coaching is just a really phenomenal way to achieve that, but it's limited in scale. It's expensive. It's time consuming. And so we saw AI as this fantastic opportunity to reach more people. And not that we would replace a human, but that now we could have human coaches and AI working together and delivering support in the ways that each of them is optimized for. And I think that's the key thing, is that delivering it in a way that is optimized for the medium. So the obvious thing you might do if you're like me, somebody who was hired as an AI expert, is now working for a coaching company, is in charge of building an AI coach. I had access to the greatest data set of human coaching, of expert coaching. I had access to this incredible knowledge base. BetterUp has this amazing knowledge base built over many years by many PhDs with practical learnings. And so, from a technical perspective, the first AI coach that we built, it was just objectively a really good coach, way better than ChatGPT. We trained it on human data. When we tested that experience, users did not enjoy that experience. They did not come back. They did not say it was a helpful coaching experience. But if you took those exact same transcripts, or you took that exact same AI coach and you had an expert coach grade it, what are the ICF competencies that the coach is exhibiting? The coach would score way higher than AI. And I think the fundamental difference here is, like, objectively good, or from a human perspective, good coaching is not the same as good AI coaching, because a human doesn't want to spend 5 minutes of an AI session doing rapport building. There's no social stakes. There's no feeling of there's actually a real human person and human connection. When we ran experiments that leaned into, oh, how do we take advantage of human coaches, thinking about it as a one-to-one, that's when we shipped an interaction that didn't actually satisfy what the user wanted. And it's when we instead embraced the idea of, like, oh, AI is actually a fundamentally different medium. It has different affordances. It has different user mental models. That's when we realized what we were shipping was really an interaction and a conversation. And we started really listening to what the users were saying and doing. That's when it really clicked for us. I'll share one fascinating experiment we ran that I think really highlights this. We had one experience that was a role play, really important, powerful coaching experience, where you have a tough meeting with your manager coming up, or you have a conflict with a spouse or somebody who you care for, and you want to prepare for a difficult conversation. Role play is a really powerful way to do that. And we had a role play experience that was facilitated by AI. AI can personalize it. It does a really good job of being in a role play. And we spent a lot of time on the technical details of the system. And we actually tested two versions. And in those two versions, we kept everything the same. We kept the model the same, the prompts the same, the RAG system the same, the UX was entirely the same. All that we changed was how the AI said hello. So in one example, in one condition, the AI was framed as being sort of human-like. And we didn't say explicitly human-like. We used a lot of the same language that you use when you talk about human coaches. They're supportive, empathetic. Think about it like a mentor. And in another condition, we emphasized how not human it was. We emphasized this is a machine. It's non-judgmental. It has access to a ton of data and perspective that you can benefit from, but it's fundamentally not a human and doesn't have capacity to judge or have real empathy. And we wanted to just test, well, does that actually make a difference? Or what do users like more? What feels more natural? We thought it was just a test on what kind of feels more natural. What stunned me was those two groups of users had not just different impressions of what they were interacting with, they had fundamentally different experiences. And the key outcome metric that we tracked for this experiment was how prepared and confident do users feel for that difficult conversation after they do the role play. So coming in, they're usually pretty nervous, they're pretty anxious about it, there's something that's weighing them down. And the outcomes for the group that was where it was primed to really think about it as a non-human, as an AI, their preparedness outcomes were double, not just like, oh, a little bit higher. They were double what the preparedness outcomes of the first group was. And when we really studied and looked at, well, what is going on here? What's the mechanism for this incredible effect? We realized and saw that it doesn't just change how the user is thinking about what the product is and what the AI is there for. When they change how they think about it, they also change how they behave. And so users would be a little bit more open, a little bit more raw, a little bit more free to share things. And when a user is more open and more honest and more raw, well, the model also responds differently. And in a conversation, right, it's neither piece lives in a vacuum, they feed off each other. It's almost like they teach each other. And so you have the exact same product, the exact same category of users, all knowledge workers, but two different framings, and you'd have wildly different interactions. And you have wildly different outcomes in terms of how useful that AI is to those individuals and how much they want to come back. And that was not something, me as an AI expert, I wanted to tell my boss that I'd done all these amazingly smart things with the AI system and trained it to be really smart. But I found that the real levers, there was a lot of interaction design in the AI system that we got to, but this was really the eye-opening moment that what we're designing is not a response engine. We're designing an interaction. We're designing a conversation. And I think for coaching, that's pretty obvious, like that coaching is a conversation. But this extends to all AI systems where you have an end user that's going back and forth with an AI. Because those are all conversations where you have two parties that are trying to achieve something together. And whether that succeeds or fails doesn't come down to how smart each individual on each side of that conversation is. It comes down to how that conversation actually develops.
So the human user needs to understand their role in the interaction and basically what persona they're inhabiting, and then perhaps what are they trying to achieve with the experience, and then what they actually do when they're engaging could change dramatically depending on what the answers are to those questions.
I'll build on that a little bit because I think there's a huge aspect here where us as users, we need to be reflective about how are we thinking about this model and the capabilities and how are we using it. But I think also for us as product builders to understand that when we ship an AI system, when I shipped an AI coach, I wasn't just designing the AI coach's behavior. I was also, in a way, designing the user's behavior. There's things that you design in the product that make users more likely to have a certain mental model that's more aligned with what the product can do. That you can design the interaction surface in the product in a way that makes it more natural for users to express certain kinds of behaviors that end up being very productive. I think there's absolutely a massive divide in how users use AI and how successful they are with it. And I think we can all, as users, learn something from that. But I think the broader point is it shouldn't all be on the users. It shouldn't all be on us to figure out what is the right way to use it. And I think we should all demand from the people building agents, from the product builders, that they design for the user and user behaviors and not just fixate on the model.
So you did conduct an extensive body of research with Professor Chris Potts. I'm curious what your initial hypothesis was and what you thought was important as you developed the study. And then, of course, we'll talk about the outcomes.
So first, Chris Potts is just a phenomenal human and probably the most capable and inspirational researcher I've ever worked with. He's the person who first kind of took me under his wing 15 years ago when I was a brash youngster trying to study language and AI. And now we're building BigSpin together. And what motivated us and the original hypothesis, it really came out of my experience at BetterUp and talking to all of my friends in industry building different kinds of AI assistants and agents, where we were all living the same story that we would ship a product or ship an agent and we'd have designed it with guardrails and evals, and yet we'd put it out there and it doesn't driving the outcomes that we wanted, or we couldn't measure what. And in order to answer that question, we couldn't just study the AI system. I had to read a lot of transcripts. I had to look at what the users were actually doing. That's how I actually understood what is this conversation, what is the interaction that's happening. And when we did that and we saw this gap between what the system, the AI builders were building and the actual experiences that users would have, we just kept seeing the same story, and we wanted to do research to actually quantify it, to actually understand if it was as widespread and as impactful as it felt like it was from our experiences. And so what we did is we looked at public data sets of actual user interactions. In this case, it was ChatGPT, so a couple of different generations of the GPT models. And we looked at, for two studies that we've done recently, for one, we looked at 100,000 real conversations, multi-turn conversations. And for the user fluency study, we focused on a specific set of 25,000. Give us the scale to actually look at what is going on in these conversations. And they span coding conversations to mental health and support, to help me write this email, like the full range of how people use AI today. Chris Potts's research and my own background What we're really good at and what we spent the last 15 years doing is how do we understand the actual communication signature, what's actually going on in the language? How is the conversation developing and unfolding? And that kind of ability to actually see what's going on between users in the language, to read between the lines and see the meaning that's the signal that's not just in the literal words, but that's between everything that's happening. That allowed us to be able to study this phenomenon at a scale that just hasn't been done publicly yet.
Interesting. How significant was the difference between what you would deem a successful user and an unsuccessful user? And maybe you could talk about what those markers are. Like, what is a success and what is a failure?
So this surprised me. This is what we call the user fluency paradox. So we studied three things, three core things. Number one, was the interaction successful? Were there any failures? Did the user get what they want? So that's one thing that we're looking for in every conversation. The second thing we looked for in every conversation was how hard was the thing that the user was trying to achieve? How complicated was it? Is it like, hey, summarize this one page PDF, or is it we need to really go through and think about the code and these edge cases? So we looked at, are they successful? How difficult and complicated was it what they were trying to achieve? And then the third crucial thing, what are the behaviors? What was the user actually doing in that interaction? Were they asking a question? Were they accepting it? Were they pushing back? Were they saying, oh, I forgot to mention we also need to optimize for this or we need to incorporate that? So we looked at those three things. And what I expected to see is that you have a spectrum of users, some of whom are a little bit more engaged, a little bit more high fluency in terms of how they use the AI, and that they would see fewer failures and succeed more. What we found is actually expert users, the ones who have the most experience with AI, who demonstrate the most fluency behaviors in terms of how they interact with AI, they encountered more failures than moderate and minimal fluency users. So first of all, that surprised me. I was like, well, I had expected lower fluency users to see more failures. But the second thing where this becomes a paradox is they, at the same time as encountering more failures, they also achieve more success and they're able to succeed at harder, more complicated tasks. And so the core thing that we realized here is that there's actually the default case for a lot of users is to just, we call this a very delegative user style, where they essentially have a task that they want the AI to do. They tell the AI to do the task and they accept the response or maybe move on to the next task. And that is the vast majority of users. And for those users, the failures, the ways in which AI does not serve them, those failures stay invisible, which means the user doesn't recognize them. The user doesn't call them out, doesn't push back on them. It's just the AI does something wrong and the user walks away or moves on. And expert users, they catch those failures. They push back. They say, well, what about this? Are you sure about that? They're skeptical and they use an augmentative style rather than a delegative style. And for those users, their failures stop being invisible. So for novices, 85% of AI failures are invisible. The novices don't notice. For expert users, only 22% of failures are invisible. So you see already there how expert users are encountering more failures, but they're catching them, they're pushing back on them, they have behaviors that allow them to recover from those failures. And so, on average, experts take on harder tasks, about double the complexity of novice users, and are able to succeed at them, where novice users are not able to succeed at a similarly complicated task. And so you have this very small group of expert users, about 3% in our data set, only 3%. That's a tiny percentage compared to 70% that are minimal or low fluency users. You have this 3% of users that are showing what AI can do. They're the ones that are achieving really complicated things. They're the ones that are pushing back. And if you just looked at who's encountering more failures, you would pinpoint those users and think, oh, those users are failing. But actually, those users are just making the failures that are already in most of these conversations, they're just making them visible and recovering from them. And that's not because they're somehow smarter or they're somehow doing different tasks. It's just because they have different conversational behaviors. They have different dispositions. They have different reactions to the model. And it's those behaviors that make this dramatic difference in how some users are able to succeed and some users are failing and often failing silently.
Do the novice users who are failing but accepting the results aware? of the fact that they're accepting results that might not be optimal?
This is really hard to study and know objectively from this data because in order to really measure that, you have to be able to follow the user into their lives. So for code, for example, we can make some of those judgments because if the code is there, you can verify it, you can run the code, or you can check, you can have run a code review on it. We've been able to measure, hey, this was actually a bad code output. It used a module that had security vulnerability, or it included bugs, or just wouldn't run if you tried to run it. For some kinds of outputs, you can verify. For others, like drafting a marketing email or something, it's hard to measure whether that was wrong information or actively bad output. And it's hard to know whether the user accepted it and took it as truth and walked away, or whether they abandoned it because they saw, this thing isn't working and I guess it can't do what I want. I think the broader theme there is in these interactions in AI, users do not tell you when things are wrong. Even if they notice themselves, the percentage of feedback that you get as a product builder, it's a tiny percentage from users. The number of escalations or tickets, it's a really small percentage. And so you have millions of conversations happening with AI a day. Many of them contain failures, and in a large portion of those, users are walking away thinking those failures are gold. But it's just exceedingly difficult for any product builder to know about that because the user just won't tell you. They'll just walk away. It's really critical that we actually get close to the users and get close to the interactions and have a better way to understand what's actually happening in them, because otherwise we have no way to measure what's going wrong. And if we have no way to measure, we have no way to improve.
Since we're talking a lot about the behavior of the user here, less about the model, what is the set of skills that a user really needs to develop if they're going to be a feature where AI is helpful, not harmful? Because what we want to get are results that are better than what we would have had before, not worse.
The number one thing I'd say is treat it like a collaborator, not like a vending machine. You just have to be really clear about what you want. You have to come up with a really good spec and be really detailed, have a really good prompt. And what we find is that even if users have really good prompts, that doesn't mean that they get success. The number one behavior that we see leading to success is not how much can I give it up front, it's how skeptical and engaging can I be with what it gives me back. Embrace the skeptic mindset, push back, ask it why, or are you sure about that? Did you forget this? What about that? For users who are a little newer to AI, one of the things that I always recommend is pick something where you yourself are an expert or have strong opinions, and just engage on that specific topic with AI. And you will very quickly see areas where it's not quite matching how you would have answered or what you would have said or what you would have thought. Push back on that, engage in a dialogue. You'll quickly see how it's both incredibly useful for your area of domain expertise, but also has clear gaps that through skepticism, through pushback, through iteration, you can achieve something that you couldn't alone or that you would have required a lot more time. It's when users instead treat it as an oracle or really think about, oh, this thing is so smart. This thing can do so much. I'm going to really trust it. It's when users fall into that sort of mindset of looking at this big wall of text that it spits out and how confident sounding it is. And when they buy into that, that's when I think we see really dangerous things happen. We see these invisible failures that are all too common.
So there's a literacy issue with the systems. People need to come into the usage of the model, understanding perhaps that there are things that they need to learn about their own role and develop some fluency. Do you think people sometimes overestimate the capabilities of the AI in general? In my experience, I find that people are expecting an answer to come back that's got everything that they ever wanted. I'm learning through usage, which I don't think you can learn in any other way. What are the biggest assumptions that people are taking into these interactions that we need to educate people about to make sure that they're doing things to get results that they want?
I think the biggest misconception we have, and I often fall into this trap too, is thinking that the model will do work for us, that we can just offload stuff to the model and we won't have to think as hard. We won't have to work as hard in what we see in the data. Like getting good results from AI is hard work. It requires thinking, it requires judgment, it requires problem solving. And I think a lot of how we've talked about AI as an industry is as this thing that can do your job but better, and it can do this thing super fast. And so that tends to make us think about it as this all-powerful entity to delegate work to. And it is really smart, but as you mentioned, anybody who works with it on real things, there's weird gaps to it, and there's kind of you have to get a feel for it, and there's some things that it's really good at, and other things that it's not. Especially with the newer models too, there's so much going on behind the scenes that is not visible to us as a user. Like, is it high thinking effort or is it low thinking effort? Is it doing a bunch of web searches behind the scenes that I can't see, or is it not? And all of that is opaque to us as users. And so when we get into this mindset of, oh, it's just going to do work for me, I think that lulls us into this mindset where we stop thinking critically. Every time I've been successful, it's been hard work. It hasn't been like I just tell it, go do something and it does it. I have to review the output. I have to, well, what about this? And it's when I treat it as a collaborator, and particularly a collaborator that I have no fear or compunctions about giving feedback to. That's when the real magic happens. And every time I've just been like, all right, put $1 in the vending machine, see if the Coke tastes good. It's just slop.
The vending machine analogy is great. I think that's what we all thought this was a year ago when the hype started to build. And the people who are using it are the ones who are starting to realize that it's not. And it's actually reassuring in some ways. Because as you mentioned, the critical thinking that humans bring to the experience does not appear to be something that is being replaced in real time. What do you think about the divide that's happening right now between the people who are starting to learn how to work effectively with AI and the people who are not?
I think there is a large divide. If you look at our research and the data, it's a small minority of users who are the most successful. With a technology like AI, which is something that expands your capabilities, it amplifies any divides, any gaps that were already there. Because now the people who can use it really well, their own output and productivity is highly leveraged. And the folks that can't, or that use it in ways that leads to more failures or leads to lower quality results, it's not just that they don't have the same benefit. Actually, in some cases, it's a negative impact because they use AI and get the wrong answer. Or they use AI and they send their teammate a 10-page AI generated thing to go through that isn't helpful. The thing that I worry about is, and it's playing out right now, is you do have a lot of users that are in that mindset of this is an oracle. This is an all-powerful vending machine. And for those users, I do worry about the offloading of cognitive work and the atrophy of critical thinking and problem solving. Like those are, if we don't practice those muscles, we lose them. And those are precisely problem solving, really critical thinking, judgment. Those are precisely the skills that we need to have as humans to be the most effective with AI. And so what I see playing out a little bit is that you have a lot of users who are leaning on AI in a way that reduces their own ability to exercise judgment or their willingness to exercise judgment because it's hard and do problem solving. And that is making them even less equipped to take full advantage and be able to leverage AI over the next day.
So this is a perfect segue to what your new company does, BigSpin. BigSpin AI is a company that you founded fairly recently. I'd love for you to give us an overview of what the company is trying to achieve.
Core thing for us is it's not about the model. It's not about how smart it is. It's about the interaction between the AI system and the user. And we've been talking a lot about what we as users can do and how our own behaviors really influence and change what we get out of AI. We believe so strongly that it shouldn't just be on us as users. And the people building AI products, they need ways to actually understand and design the interactions, not just the raw technical capabilities, but what happens when this AI is in the room with a user? What happens when they're in the room with a user who is new to AI? Maybe doesn't have these behaviors, isn't pushing back? What happens when a user asks a really ambiguous request? What happens in the cases when a user is pushing back? Are they succeeding? Are they failing? What's leading to that? Those are all hidden to product managers, to people building AI, because those are now happening in a room that they're not in. They're happening in a room between the user and the AI. And what BigSpin exists to do is to bring product builders into that room. We have a system that uses our research and our technology to essentially read all of the conversations that are happening at scale and to identify what are the behaviors that the users are exhibiting, what are the behaviors that the AI is responding with, which of those lead to success, which of those lead to failures, and to give teams the visibility into that interactional surface area, which is really the crucial difference between success and failure, between actually trusting that it's going to deliver for users and the wide range of users and all the different ways that they interact with AI, and just flying blind. I think that's so important, not just for companies building AI products. If you're building an AI product, you want it to be great. You want it to deliver a good user experience. You want it to deliver valuable ROI. I think more broadly about AI as a force for good for all of us, and also the risks of if we use it wrong or if we have the wrong mindsets. I don't think it should be on us as users. I don't think the solution is somehow training billions of humans exactly the right behaviors that they should be engaging in. The real answer is to design the interaction between the model and the user, and to align that better for the actual usage that we see and the outcomes that we want to drive. So BigSpin helps product teams, anybody shipping an AI agent. How do you actually know what's going on with your users? How do you know how to fix the interaction layer?
Is that like a layer that you put over the experiences everybody's having with AI models, and then you can see trends in the usage? What are the mechanics?
Yeah, exactly. So if you're familiar with traditional software and you're a product manager, the traditional way to understand what users are actually doing and if they're successful, we had a solution for it and we had dashboards for it. You just track events. Are users clicking on this? Then are they advancing to the next page? And are they going through the full funnel? Do they get their report at the end or whatever the work product is? And that gave product managers a lot of intelligence on, okay, where's the user journey breaking? Where's the bottleneck? Where do we need to improve things? Now, all of the user experience, success, failure, everything is happening in a conversation. And that same telemetry, like you don't have those click events. You don't know, you can't follow what a user journey actually looks like. It's just in a conversation. And so what our software does is it essentially adds that missing layer of instrumentation. And so now you can actually see what's going on. The outcome of the conversation was success on this work product, but user experience was low because there was frustration that they expressed. So we turn what was a black box into something that now teams can measure. They can track trends over time. They can identify emergent patterns or trends and understand what are the behaviors, what are the things we need to fix about our AI? How do we need to improve its behavior so that it's better serving users?
Does it also lead to conversations about training your own teams on how to use the tools better? And who's equipped to do that training? I suppose there are a few people out there who could do it, but in many organizations, the leaders are learning too. They're likely looking for resources to help their teams learn these skills quickly. How do you advise them on how to upskill their organization quickly?
Yeah. This is such an interesting dynamic in organizations because everybody is learning at the same time and same speed. Like CEOs don't have 10 years of experience using AI. In many cases, there's a tension there or a trap potentially, which is that the further away an individual is from the actual work that's happening on the ground, the harder it is for them to judge true quality. So AI is fantastic at the first 80%. You ask it to do anything, and one shot, the first 80% feels like magic. It's the last 20%. You can get it to generate an email, looks good, generate a PDF of something, but it's that last 20% of like, wait, no, it needs to have my voice, or actually this is the argument we want to make looks like this, or actually the code needs to have these requirements because we have these product goals or these business constraints. It's that last 20% that is so difficult and requires all of that pushback, all of that iteration, all of that judgment and expertise and creativity. The trap that you can fall into is you're so far from the work that's happening on the ground that it's really hard for them to see the difference between 80% and 90% because they're just not in it as much. They don't know the details. And so it can lull them into this sense of, well, the AI should be good enough. Look, I tried this thing. It worked. Like I asked ChatGPT to do X, Y, and Z. It looks like it's pretty good at it. Why haven't we revolutionized X or why haven't we done Z? The advice I always give to anybody that's trying to implement AI, never treat it like a tool drop. Never be like, all right, we're all using this now. I've got subscriptions for everybody. Everybody's on Claude Code now. It's to lead by example, by actually engaging with these tools, being that highly augmentative, that skeptical, that collaborative user. It's through actually just through doing it. That's the highest leverage. The other trap is depending upon how a leader introduces a tool and how they talk about it, you can have wildly different outcomes from the team. So there's these two mindsets. BetterUp called them passengers and pilots to give them a little bit more of an intuitive name. But one mindset, it's this sense of I am the master of my own fate. I am the creative, high judgment individual. I now have access to this tool. I have agency. I get to use it how I want. I get to exercise my expertise and my will and my desire. Those are the users who feel a real sense of that they're using it as a tool. They're leveraging it. And then there's another group that treats it more passively. They're often the ones who are being told to adopt a tool. They're being told, hey, you need to start using this tool. This thing can do XYZ better than you. When a tool is introduced to a user in that way, they tend to adopt more of this passive mindset. And as a result, they actually don't get good results out of the tool because they're not exercising their judgment. They're not being engaged. They're not pushing back. And so full circle back to role play and how you frame the AI product. It's the exact same in the organization. How you frame the tool, how users should use it, what the purpose of it is, has a dramatic impact on how users feel about it, how they think about it, and then in turn, how they use it.
This is very practical advice, and it makes you feel maybe better, less anxious about using the tools, which might be the opposite of what people might think, because it suggests that the human mind is important to this process. I think what
It's
everybody's
critical.
afraid of is that they're not going to be important to the process and that we're going to show them the door.
It requires both sides.
Yeah. So, what are the things people can do right now to start improving their outcomes?
I would say two things. I think it's a trap for all of us to think that it's either a model problem or a user problem. Both have roles to play, but if we just focus on it as we need to get better as users and we need to train our skills or just the models need to get better, I think we won't really meet the moment where it needs to be met, which is really an interaction problem. And it's how we as users are interacting with the model. So the two sides of that are one, as a user, the number one thing to do, open a ChatGPT thread that you've had or anything where you're doing real work and maybe just ask it like, what are you not sure about that we've discussed? Or what have you said in this conversation that actually you might want to take back or that there might be hidden assumptions behind? Just ask a skeptical question. And that's just to see how a little bit of skepticism or a little bit of verification, a little bit of pushback can surface things that you might have just glossed over or you might not have noticed while you were in the moment. And just getting in that habit and getting in that practice of giving feedback to the AI, asking it to check things, asking to verify. If that's not a reflex that you have, try it. Try to develop it and see whether you're able to get higher quality outputs or more confidence in the AI. The second piece of the interaction is we should demand this from product builders. And if we are ones building AI products, we should demand that those product builders design an AI that works for us as users. Just one great example of this is most AI models are post-trained to err on the side of giving you as much as possible. Well, let me actually first just give you a 10 bullet point list of what I think you want. And that's like they generate rather than clarifying. And that's a really dangerous thing for a lot of AI agents and a lot of especially lower fluency users when you have users coming in with ambiguous requests. And sometimes we don't even quite know what we want, or it's really hard to express it. Like it's very normal to come to AI with something that's still half formed, that's a little vague, and you want AI to be a thought partner to help you flesh it out and figure it out. And too many, like if you just take an AI off the shelf, and a lot of agent builders today, they think, well, Claude's good enough, GPT's good enough, I'll take it off the shelf. What you get is an agent that's just going to generate a bunch of text anytime a user asks something. And it's precisely in those moments when you have a low fluency user who maybe trusts the AI a little bit too much and didn't realize that their own input was a little vague, or that they forgot to attach the attachment. This happens to me all the time. I'm like, hey, what do you think about this PDF? Can you summarize it for me? And I'll forget to attach it. And the AI still responds like, oh, this is a really fascinating PDF. It's just stunning that AI still will just bowl over that because they're really post-trained to just try to guess what you mean and be helpful. I think that's dangerous in a world where you have just a whole wide range of different users, how they use it, how they're still gaining fluency with AI, the kinds of inputs that they're able to provide. And so we should demand and ask of the products that we're using, and we should seek out products that actually pay attention to and design for the interaction and design for the users that they have, not the idealized users that they hope to have.
Okay, that's great advice. I don't know exactly how to pass feedback along to these model creators, but I'm going to look for that channel.
Pass feedback directly in the chat. That's the best way. Do it directly. Give the model direct feedback.
Okay.
You will get better results. And then if that AI agent, if the builders of that product hopefully have a good enough stack, they'll be able to detect it.
You hear everybody put your feedback in the chat. What do you think is most important for people working in product today to keep in mind when they're building these types of products? Again, this is a group of people who do not have 10 years of experience doing it for the most part. They're transitioning into roles where they're doing it. So they may be learning on the job.
The practice that was most valuable for me as a product leader building an AI coach, and is most valuable for anybody, is just read what's actually going on with users and the AI. It's been part of the product approach for so long. Be as close as you can to your users. I think sometimes in the AI conversation, we've almost forgotten that. We get so caught up in the advances on the technical side that we've often forgotten to just get back to basics and actually just read and look at and talk to users about what they want and what they need and what their experiences are. In my own experiences, most of the time, I was wrong about what I guessed users would want to do. Many of the times when we, as product builders, we think the user is going to have this persona and look like this and obviously ask these questions and obviously want this, the actual reality totally upends that. Users are just very different from what we expected. They ask different questions. They have different mental models. We're not going to be able to design products that really work for those users, that deliver what they want, how they need it, in the workflows that they need. Building the most advanced technical system isn't going to deliver that. Being close to the user, empathy with the user, really understanding where they're coming from and what they want to get out of it and how they behave, that's what's going to allow us to build a really effective AI product. It's really exciting, everything that's happening in AI. Don't let it distract you too much from the most basic thing, which is we're all designing interactions now. And we're designing model behavior and we're designing user behavior. And some of the most mundane, non-AI parts of our product can end up being the highest leverage for how we get better outcomes. Like just in the welcome screen experiment, just changing how the role play was introduced actually made our product a lot more powerful and a lot more valuable than all of the AI investment that had happened before that. And so it's such a, in so many ways, it's a reassuring thing. It's a reason why a lot of people go into product, because they care about the user and they care about solving a problem for the user. It's that muscle that we need to exercise.
Completely agree. And it's fascinating because it has a lot to do with psychology. And for many people who go into product, you're absolutely right. They're going into it because they like the fact that they're working for the user, not necessarily going into it for the tech itself. It feels like an exciting development and opportunity. And I wanted to mention that Chris Potts is indeed your co-founder. I don't think we mentioned that earlier.
We are avid, passionate researchers. We'll continue publishing. We'll continue to try to bring visibility and bring real data and bring receipts to this conversation. Read about it or look up Chris Potts. He does incredible research, not just for BigSpin, but across the field. And yeah, find me on Twitter. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Awesome. This has been illuminating and gives me optimism. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
This podcast is an original production of Women in Product. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the Women in Product YouTube channel. Leave us a review so that others can discover us, or share this episode with someone you know. Thanks for joining.